Hello, everyone. My name is Kashawn Hopkins. I'm an instructional technology specialist from Oklahoma Public School Resource Center. And today I'm going to talk about Quizlet, which is a flashcard creation tool. It has a couple of activities in there. While some of the features are locked behind premium accounts, I think you can get really far with the free accounts. You can get a lot of the benefits that you can get from having digital flashcards at the ready. Before I get too deep into that, I'm joined here with my colleague here. I think you should get to know him. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Kurt Bernhardt. I'm the Director of Technology for OPSRC. Kashawn and I make up the technology team here. We're here to help with any type of technology needs you have. So just reach out to us and Kashawn will let you know how.
I would say a great way to get access to us is through techteam@opsrc.net. I'll shoot both me and Kurt an email, and we'll try to get to you as best as we can, as fast as we can. Additionally, if you want access to the slides, I have a direct link to it. I'm going to read it off since it's case sensitive. It's going to be lowercase t period ly / uppercase c lowercase q lowercase y uppercase x. Or if you're viewing this through the recording, then you probably have access to opsrc.net / tech talks. I'm going to zip over there for just a quick moment, just in case you haven't seen this page yet. Here's where all the tech talks live. We have the upcoming tech talks at the top. So if you like what you see here, we have a couple of good ones, I think, and have this nice little set along with Quizlet. We have Flippity, quizzes 2. I'm going to do a revisit of that, and then bottle learning. So you don't want to miss out on any of that. Go ahead and register for them. And in the middle of the page, we have a button that you can use to suggest a future tech topic or tool. I would love to get some ideas from the community at large. And at the bottom, we have the treasure trove, which is the archive tech talk. So this makes up all the ones that I've done, all 50 of them, and hopefully many more. This ranges from different things like technology standards, tech integration models, special interest topics, and individual tech tools, which that part makes up a bulk of the archived ones. Each one of these is accompanied by a recording, very much like the one we're doing right now, and presentation slides that link to any of the research I've done, some resources, or anything that you want to revisit. So I highly recommend that you bookmark this page. I think it will be really useful for you to not only have, but also to share with your colleagues as well, once you treat this as a resource. But enough about the past. Let's look into the future with Quizlet. I want to give an example of what this looks like in action. I'm going to do a classic live activity, which is taking flashcards and then having students work through them about as fast as they can. It's going to be a very short activity, just to give you a taste of what it looks like on the student's perspective to log in. Or in fact, they don't even have to log in. They just need some sort of device with a browser. I'm able to go through here, so I'll guide you through a little bit of that step. So I'm going to swap over here to the teacher view, and I'm going to give you a moment if you want to participate in here. I have some players as well. I'm going to make sure things are good on my end, and we'll get to this started in a second. Yeah. Of course. All right, give me a second. But notice that you can get to this in one of two ways. Either you can go to the website, quizlet.live, and then type in that code. Also, which is what I'm doing right now, is scan the QR code, making it really easy. And also, in fact, there's a third type over down here at the very bottom left-hand corner. You can copy a game link, which is quite useful. So yeah, let's jump in here. Very cool. And I highly recommend that if you're going to do a classic live activity, I think this fits really nicely, like as a review at the very start of class to review topics that you've covered in the previous one. So let us join. Cool. And then I'm going to click create game. The very first step is it puts everybody in teams. You can either have a group game or just individual teams like the ones that you see in front of you. Then I'm going to click start game. and you'll see that there's a progress bar on here. On your screens, if you're participating on here, you should see the question and the answer, and you just try to get through as many as you can. You can even see the progress bar at the very top. If you get them right, awesome, you progress through. If you get them wrong, that is totally fine. It just freezes you for a moment. And then you keep playing until the very first person answers all of the questions correctly. So I'll just give you a moment to kind of make your way through. And hooray, fantastic, excellent work. All right, now this does cut the activity off a little bit early. There's no really way to turn it off, but at the very least, you have people at least trying to refresh some of the terms on here. There is another activity that you can do if you want everybody to stay on the same pace, which I'll show a little bit later, but I just wanted to give you an idea what it looks like from the student's perspective. It's really easy. You don't have to log into account, although you can, and I'll show you how to go through a bit of that process once we start setting up classes. All right, let me log out of this real quick, and then we can start talking about what we're going to cover in this Tech Talk. So my objective here is after this Tech Talk, educators will be able to integrate Quizlet into their classroom to help students remediate and extend their learning here. My schedule is pretty standard for Tech Talks. I'm going to start with the tool overview, answer a couple questions about that, highlight a few features and talk about some of the benefits there. And I'll spend a majority of the time showcasing the tool itself and what it's capable of and what your first couple of steps would look like. Next, I want to talk just a little bit about integrating technology. I'm all about having a plan before that technology even hits your classroom. That way you can get the most out of that tool. And you'll have more reliable results, what you want to see when you're putting that tool in there. Your students will get more out of it. Then I'm going to take those first 2 points, combine them together into tool applications. I'm going to try to give you an idea of what would be your first steps, like what would this tool actually look like in your classroom if you use it? And I'm going to invite you to think about that as well. And then at the very end, we'll wrap this all up. I'll share any resources that I have and try to point out some goodies that I think will help benefit you to either revisit anything that I've talked about or extending your learning there. So that's the gist of it. And without further ado, let's jump on in. First of all, just a real quick basic definition. If someone asks you, hey, what's Quizlet? You could say it creates sets of digital flashcards. I remember using flashcards as a common tool for studying. I think it's really good for retrieval and just having the ability to have access to it as long as you have your phone or some kind of device, you can get to it. You know, students usually always have access to that in one form or another. And so it's really great that you can have that. That way you don't have to carry pack of cards or anything like that. Although, you know, you can still use index cards for very useful things, but at the very least, very helpful, very accessible. A couple of features that I do want to point out here that I want to make sure I cover is very straightforward cards. You got a front and a back. On one side, you put a term, and the other side, you put a definition. Quite good. And you can put images in it as well. So you can pair diagrams and point certain parts of it. You can create your own for a class, or the students can create their own. So pretty straightforward on being able to build these out. There are free activities. You know, you can use them like a regular flashcard, like you're flipping around. There's also a matching activity that I think is really useful. If you stick to free accounts, you do have limited versions of something called a learn activity and a test activity. So you can use a bit of that, and the platform is pretty good at pointing out, hey, you can use this, but if you want to use it more beyond the sets, you're going to have to pay for it, which is understandable. There is a sorting feature in there. So if you're ever going through flashcards and you're starting to feel like you're getting them, you don't want to see the same cards over and over. You want to focus on the ones that you want to get more practice on. And so there's a way to filter out cards that you think you have learned as you're working your way through them. But of course, you can unselect it if you want to filter cards back in. There's also an audio reader. So if you use, you know, plain English, it'll read it out for you. Some text to speech, so really quite nice feature that I love. Having accessibility as a part of your tool here. There is a community library, so you don't have to create all the sets that you want. You can just search for them, and there's loads of them out there. Various qualities to them, but you can always take a look before you use any set, and you can also edit them as well. You treat them like templates. There is a class feature, which for free accounts, you get 8 free classes. If you delete them, you get them back. But yeah, just know there's limitations on that, and I'll show you what the classes look like And then finally, as a part of the class features, you also have a Google Classroom integration. So you can upload your rosters directly into Quizlet, and then you can go from there and have students log in and take advantage of those features. Next, a couple of benefits that I do want to point out, since this does have to do with flashcards. I think it has a lot of learning theories that back it up quite a bit. Like, for example, I think this aids the retrieval process and supports long-term memory. And so just giving students an opportunity to practice beyond the single learning experience, I think is going to help them in terms of remembering some of the ideas that you try to go over. I think this promotes active and self-regulated and spaced learning. And so I think under here, you're giving students an opportunity to engage in strategies that is going to help them revisit and some of the material that you have here in a way that is, they're not just passively receiving some of the information. And it's not just going to be hopefully not used in all just one session, but multiple sessions spaced over a long period of time, making it a little bit easier for them to remember the content. And of course, you can engage in metacognition strategies. If you have students study in pairs, they can work with each other. That way you don't have that case where students are kind of like cheating, working with the flashcards, cheating themselves out of using it by looking at both sides without actually going through the process of forcing themselves to review some of the material there. So just a few things to keep in mind. And just before we touch the showcase, a couple of steps that I hope we're going to engage in, time willing here. So starting at the top, working our way down, I'm going to create an account and log in. Then optional, these two steps here, you could create in a class or invite students. I say it's optional because you can use the very basic features just like we did at the very beginning of the Tech Talk, where we went through the whole activity. You never had the login, you just needed a device. But if you want students to have access to a recess section, like you want them to be able to create their own flashcards, I highly recommend that you take advantage of that, and you have to go through these two steps to do that. Next, we'll create or discover a study set, and then last, we will do a quick activity. I'll show you how to set some of that up. And the way you can access it is through here, Quizlet.com. So let's get to it. Okay, so starting here, Quizlet.com, we are at the main page here. So at the top right-hand corner, you see this big yellow button that says sign up. That is where you will get started. If you haven't done so already, I'm going to skip that a little bit and click on log in. Note that you can log in with a Google account, Facebook, Apple, or you can just use a regular email, no problem. So I'm going to click on login with Google. And I'm into my account here on my dashboard. Hooray, I got a one-day streak. Okay, from here, that would be our first step. Our second step would be to create a class. We're going to invite students in there as well while we're there. So I'm going to go to the top left-hand corner and click create. I'll get a drop-down menu that has class, study set, which we'll get to later, and then folder, which I think is really nice if you want, because there's no filtering system for your class sets. So a good way to do that is to set up folders and then filter down your study sets into them. I think it would be quite useful, especially if you have a class setup. If you let students create their own sets, it's automatically added into your study sets. So this is a good way to filter it down. I'm going to click on the very first option though, which is class. Okay. So let's go through the process of creating a class. We just need to give it a name. And just do something generic like Mr. Hopkins, 6th Form. There we go. Give it a description if you want. You have two options. You can allow class members to add or remove sets. So I'm going to let students have that power here. I want them to be a little bit more engaged with the tool here. Of course, if you're starting out and you don't want to have that enabled, that's fine. There's a second option that allows class members to invite new members. If you want to turn that off, that's cool too. Then you'll put a school name down. I just put Oklahoma Public School Resource Center and then click create class.
What's the entry door?
Okay. So we have the class here. If I click on members here on the top left-hand corner. Oh, well, yeah, members. There is an invite link here if there's no students. There's also an invite link on the right-hand side. And also in the top right-hand corner, if you click this second button that says add members, when I hover over it, you'll get a little space here that lets you invite them. So you can type this in manually. If they already have an account, you can type in the usernames or the emails, or you can see at the very bottom of my screen, it says invite by linking Google Classroom. So it will guide you through the different steps there to get all the students into your class there. So pretty straightforward process. And I think I may already have an example here. Yeah, so once you have those members, you'll see them pop up on here. Fantastic. And if you see someone you don't like in there, you can always click on these three dots on their name and then click remove, and it gets rid of them, no problem. So nice little security features there. That covers steps 2 and 3. Step 4, create or discover a study set. So you can either do it one of two ways. Either top right-hand corner, you can discover a set, and I can just do that by typing in something in the search bar that I have here. So let's do English vocabulary, sure. And you can see study sets people have created. You can see things pulled from textbooks or other classes that exist. Lots of different options for you to look through here. So you might want to filter this down to study sets. You can find things that have been already created by other people. If you find something you like, you can click on it. And yeah, from there, this will be put inside of your library. And if you want to modify a copy of this, you can go down to save and edit, the second option here. Nope, wait, not that one. Add to set or class. There we go. And you can select whatever classes that you want to dump them in, or you could dump them in a folder, no problem. So not a problem. So this one appears to have some custom stuff in there that I can't use, so I won't be able to edit this. But if you find something that you can edit, then you can jump into it. So maybe I can find something. Let me see if there's something in one of these textbooks that I can use here. Nope, I guess not. Okay. I won't play with it too much, but I think you get the idea. Top left-hand corner, if I click on create, I can click on study set to create my own. Really straightforward stuff here. I have the title, which is, I don't know, if I'm recreating something that I did before, I can do multiplication problems. I can add a description if I'd like. On the right-hand side, I can click and decide who has permissions to either view the set or to edit the set. And so if I click on change, I can make some adjustments there. If I scroll down here, the only thing that I really need is the terms and definitions that I have here. And so, for example, I can put down 3 times 5. And you see there's a little helpful suggestions to keep my formatting done on here. So 3 times 5 equals, and then I can put the definition 15. So either type it down or press 15. And if I want to, I can add images as well. If I click image, I can select ones that are down here. Unfortunately, one of the things that I definitely need to point out is you'll notice these little locks here. So a good chunk of these is locked under Quizlet Plus, which is a paid account type of business. So if you want to upload your own images or make a multiple choice, or make some adjustments for the text on here, those are all locked features on there, which is a little unfortunate, but it's there. If you're interested and you really like this tool, then you can invest in that. And then from there, you just fill out the rest of the sets. Now, something I highly recommend that you do is create at least 6 cards, because if you have less than 6 cards, you can't do any of the activities, class-wide activities at least. So I'm going to pretend that I filled these out. And once you have up to 6 questions, I can scroll down to the bottom and click create. Or on the top right-hand corner, I can also click create. Same thing. Nope, I need 2 cards at least. Okay. Times 10 is 40. Sure. Oh, and I need a language too. I'm trying to skip ahead, I guess. So this is in English. There we go. So the bare minimum, I tried to skip it and it got mad at me, is 2 questions, and you have to at least select a language for your cards here. So in this case, I picked English, but doesn't necessarily matter. And I could create. There we go. Now notice I don't have access to these activities here, but at least I have these self-study activities. So you have a couple of ways to interact with your flashcards. You have on the top left-hand corner this little sound symbol, which will read it off to you. Note, if you type down X for multiplication, it will say X instead of multiply. So it's not smart at just reading it off. I can click on the card itself. It'll flip it over. So I can click it as many times and flip it. I can click the arrow keys to swap between cards. Top right-hand corner, if I want to edit any of these on the fly, you can. The star button will favorite this for me, which will put them in a separate set. And you'll see that there's also buttons below the card, so I can play this through automatically. I can click shuffle to mix up the cards as well. If there's a bunch of cards, that works a little better. Bottom right-hand corner, my options. Under the options menu, there's the sorting button. So if I turn that on, at the bottom of my cards, it will say whether or not I'm still learning the card or if I know the card, and then sift them into 2 different piles. So when it reloops into itself, it will go through the still learning set instead of the no set. It will filter some of those cards out. And of course, you can click full screen to make it a little bigger. So quite nice if you just want to weed out some of the stuff here. The other self-study activity that is free is the matching, which won't look as exciting for the set that I have, so I'm going to swap to another. So I'm going to click on your library. If I want to go to old sets, I'm going to click on view all sets here. I'm going to filter this down to ones I've created. And there we go. There's the one that I have from earlier.
That's just the line.
So I can click on match.
It's both the edge of the window and the edge. No, it would actually be.
Okay. And from here, it will set up a matching activity for me. It'll take all my cards, all the terms, all the definitions, shuffle them up. And then when I click start game, you can see that there's this lovely web here. On the left-hand side, you can see that there's a little timer. So I want to ideally go for this as fast as I can. So click and drag. 8 times 8 equals 64. 6 times 10 equals 60. And if I get it wrong, 4 times 7, 15, it will kick that out. And then I have to keep playing. So really good for like just a single activity you can work your way through until all the cards are done. Okay. One last thing is I want to show you how to set up an activity. Once you have the sets already created, you just select the activity that you want to do. Like if you want to do checkpoint, you just click that. Excuse me. And the difference between, one of the differences between classic live and checkpoint activities is the fact for checkpoint, you select 12 out of the entire set. In this case, I have less than 12, so I just select all the ones that exist and then click continue. It normally plays music here. If you don't like the music, top right-hand corner, you can click the little sound button to mute it. And then from here, you're at the page where students can get into the activity here. Okay, I think that is it for now. Maybe next time we'll be able to get further into Quizlet and maybe show you some of those premium features a bit later. For right now, I want to dedicate just a little bit of time talking about technology integration and applications for Quizlet. And if you've made it up to this point, I really do appreciate you coming to this tech talk. Hopefully you found this tool useful in some way. I want to help you get to those first steps there and actually applying some of that information. So first of which, you want to ask yourself the question before you introduce any technology in your classroom. I highly recommend you ask the question to yourself, how would you integrate a piece of technology? And a couple of different ways to answer that question, but I'm going to offer you at least one way if your answer to that question is nothing. This is a technology integration model called the technology integration matrix. The basic idea is that you have these 5 different characteristics of your learning environments mixed in with 5 different levels of technology integration. Starting from the left, which is more simple, to the right, which is more complex. You get a little bit more, but it's more engaging. Here are the 5 characteristics: active, collaborative, constructive, authentic, and goal-directed. And I'm going to pick one of these characteristics and expand on it using an activity called Take It Up a Level. The idea is that I look at one characteristic and then assess where my classroom is with that characteristic with a technology tool, and then try to see what would it take to go to the next step here. So I think this is really good if you're starting out using a tool. So I have selected the characteristic active, which is characterized by engaging with the content with the tool instead of receiving information passively here. So I'm going to guide you through what would that look like inside of a classroom here, or at least what I think it looks like theoretically. So first of which, the very first step, if your students have never used this tool before and they're learning something new or working through something, the entry phase is where they're at, which is characterized by passive use of the tool here. So in this case, I say that teacher, like doing an in-class review using the Classic Live or using the checkpoint activity as sort of an end of class formative assessment, I think is a really good use of this tool, because students are getting used to logging in, going through those processes. You can set up those like classroom management techniques, and you can just have students just have something, something a little bit engaging here, but not at the most level that they could go. And I think this is a good first step here. Once students feel a little bit more comfortable, you can guide them through the adoption phase, which is characterized by more procedural use of the tool. So once they have gotten a little comfortable, they know what a Quizlet is when you say Quizlet, guide them through those processes that are pretty straightforward. So like, for example, you can have students access their class and review study sets curated by you. So this gives them an active resource they can always reach back into. If test time's coming up, they can always go back into it, and they can take advantage of that spaced learning. So instead of trying to cram everything into one day, they have something to do every single day to refer back to. And then once you feel like students are comfortable with that, bump them up a notch. So after the adoption phase is the adaptation phase, which is more characterized by independent use of the tool. So between these 3 different steps, you try to go from teacher-focused use of the tool towards more student-focused use of this tool. So in this case, I recommend that you have students start logging into their accounts and then start creating their own sets and using them. Maybe you can combine this up with a little bit of the collaboration piece. You can have students work together and quiz each other using the sets that they've created, and then helping them just continuously engage with that process of retrieving information and working through it. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it will help their memories and help them recall things when it comes test time. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this tech talk. I'm just going to wrap this up real quick with the last minute or so that I have. Last couple of slides are dedicated to resources I find. The top set, I think, is quite good for reviewing anything I've talked about. The Quizlet blog, I think, has some good monthly updates in there. And at the bottom, there are some extra resources, I think, that are quite good that Quizlet has put out that I think are worth checking out. Not necessarily tied exactly to Quizlet, but it does take advantage of some of its features there. The next slide is dedicated to technology integration. If this is kind of the first you've heard of it or you want to know more, this whole page is dedicated to that. And then finally, it's a new year. I've updated this last page here. So a big, huge thank you. to everyone here. I have a link to the evaluation. If you could just take a little bit of moment, it won't take you that long to go through just a couple of questions, help make my tech talks a little bit better. And there's also a QR code there on the right-hand side that you can take advantage of. My name is Kashawn Hopkins. I'm joined here with Kurt Bernhardt. Thank you so much, Kurt. You can contact the tech team through techteam@opsrc.net. And if you like what I do here, opsrc.net/tech talks is where you can get access to not just this recording, but all the previous ones that I've done. And also, these are actual buttons you can click on and get access to our socials there. We have some really exciting stuff coming up. We have our communications director has kind of planned out our whole year, and there's some really cool stuff that we're starting to engage more in. And so you definitely don't want to miss out on any of that. So click one of those buttons and share out and connect. But for right now, I think that is enough of me. I look forward to the future tech talks that I'm going to do, and I hope to see you there. Have a great day.